obsessed with me.
Who I smoke, Lil Leaky. Who I smoke, Big Meaty. Who I smoke, Lil 2 3 Wonder.
Why are you so obsessed with me?
I was so moved. This is how audiences must have felt when they first saw Olivier play Hamlet. Oh, bravo, boys and girls. Bravo. Except for you. You were god-awful.
Full disclosure, news and commentary, number 152. 52. Why am I so perplexed? So I looked into this. Oh my God, make sure I'm saying everything right. The Palmetto Creep Patrol thing. So it appears to be they pose as a 14-year-old girl. And I'm taking them at their word, right? So they don't initiate the chats, but they sort of put themselves out there. These dudes, who, I'll just say this, and again, people might take this as me defending dudes or whatever. I'm just going to lay out things as I see it, my opinion. Pretty learned one. And then I'm going to tell you about contact that I had with something much bigger in scope than what Palmetto Creep Patrol is attempting to do, right? And it all relates to wrestling, right? Are the only people that Palmetto has gone after wrestlers? No. No. But there have been quite a few. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is this. These are dimwits. These are fucking morons. Not the Palmetto Creep Patrol necessarily, but the people that they're getting. You got to realize that. It's like a lot of the people that they nabbed for the To Catch a Predator stuff. They famously put out like, oh, this person's a cancer doctor or whatever. That is the exception to the rule, my friends. That is the truth. That the people that you're tending to get are knuckle-dragging morons, like 70 IQ motherfuckers. That's just the way it is. When Perverted Justice did this, the net that they cast, did they get a variety of people? Yes. You're going to get a variety of people, creeps and all the rest of it. But for the most part, you are dragging that net at the bottom of the ocean, and you're getting bottom feeder dumb fuck types. And that's who Palmetto is getting. And make no mistake about it. Look at the fucking pictures of these fucking mooks, man. Like, and so I want to talk about Luka Daniels specifically, because this is the thing that caused a whole lot of problems. So Luka Daniels is an aspiring wrestler. I'll just say that. And Palmetto Creep Patrol, somebody was lifting their logo and stuff like that in an attempt to make Luka Daniels look bad, right? So Luka Daniels says this, and this is after Palmetto Creep Patrol going, Luka Daniels has not been in a single one of our decoys inboxes. Any chat you see using our picture and likeness is fake and should be treated as such. So Luka Daniels said, it has come to my attention that a fake chat log and fake pictures of myself have been leaked somewhere online. I wanted to make a post on this now. In the event of anything out of the ordinary occurs, I have already spoken to Palmetto Creep Patrol to show them what I've sent previously. I'm not sure if more fake chats have been posted anywhere. I have friends currently looking online for me. The only reason I'm posting this is to ensure everyone knows the truth. I am against pedophiles, and my speaking up against them has somehow turned into a joke to others, thinking it was okay to send out fake logs about me. I do have proof everything is fake, and Palmetto Creep Patrol has confirmed everything as well for me. Thanks, everyone. This is... all right. So, this caused problems between a couple of people at a supposedly Southern Fried show. I noticed that a number of wrestling people in the Georgia area are, I'm not going to use the word obsessed, that implies something very negative. I will say that they're very active in what Palmetto Creep Patrol is doing, watching all the videos. When you stare into the abyss stares back into you. Here's my cautionary tale. So there was a dude when the IWC was in its infancy, right? Late 90s, early 2000s. And he was a regular writer on at least one of the sites where I wrote as Inside Clyde. And his writing moniker was Xavier Von Erich, which is typical for the kind of names that people had, you know, Mr. Monday Night and other guys that I wrote with. And but Xavier Von Erich was like what we would call sort of a neckbeard now, right? Kind of an odd duck, and a guy who would get into these sort of online altercations with other wrestling writers, and it was always, looking back on it, it was pretty cringy shit, but it was also typical of the IWC back then. Well, that Xavier Von Erich was one of the founding people behind Perverted Justice. The people that would sort of put the decoys out online. And at their height, they worked with Dateline, which means they worked with Chris Hansen. So yes, it was Perverted Justice who was responsible for making those chat logs and all of that stuff, like Palmetto Creep Patrol does. Now, Perverted Justice and Xavier Von Erich, at one point, they really had it going on. If you look at the history of that organization, and a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, they're basically out of that business. And now the website is just sort of an ode to, like, here's what we did in the past. And they were making gobs of money. And again, this isn't to say that that made it less legitimate or anything like this, but these are facts. And there's something about Palmetto Creep Patrol that I want to bring up at the end of this that is troubling. So at one point, it came out in a trial that Xavier Von Erich was making $120,000 a year doing this thing. And so the defense argued, and of course the defense, what are they trying to do? They're trying to defend their clients. I get that. But they did make the very powerful argument that they had an incentive to get more high-profile, interesting people. A cancer doctor, as opposed to the mouth-breathing losers that they usually got. Doesn't make as good television. Doesn't really support the narrative that this is this pervasive problem that these people are helping to catch. When I dug into it further, to be fair, for full disclosure, Perverted Justice, at least they're claiming on their website, that their work has led to 632 convictions, possibly as high as 650. And that's a lot. I was wondering what the effectiveness of this was. So that is effective. And now Palmetto Creep Patrol is claiming a couple as well. And Palmetto Creep Patrol says the people in question always initiate the chat. We share all this information with the cops, blah, 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 blah. Now, Perverted Justice, when I dug into this, because, you know, it's been a long time since I thought about them, because I try not to stare into the abyss, because it ends up staring back into you. We'll get into that more later. Because they did run into these problems. So Perverted Justice had to do all this different stuff because this shit was going to go to trial. And so they had to do all of these mechanisms, supposedly, where all the chats were being mirrored online in a way that they couldn't be doctored and all the rest of this. But when asked to put up evidence of this, they didn't do it. So a whole bunch of cases in the New York area were completely thrown out because perverted justice refused to be able to supply this information, that there was no way for their chats to be faked. Now, Palmetto Creep Patrol is saying, our chats would never be faked and la la la. Okay. The thing that bothers me, and by the way, perverted justice, they ended up getting all this money, and then they ended up blowing it on a couple of business ventures, sort of like branching off from what they were doing. Oh, we're gonna have this software in schools so people can teach kids how to be safe online. Never happened. Bunch of money gone. The top officers, including Xavier Von Erich, got a lot of money, and then eventually it all went away, basically. And Chris Hansen, who I saw that another people would comment, ooh, they always like tweet. Chris Hansen, not the cleanest dude. That's for damn sure. Especially when you look at his series on Discovery Plus. I'm big on the YouTube thing, and the way that he sort of used and manipulated people to try to nab this YouTube guy called Onision. By the way, nothing bad has happened to Onision. Hasn't been don't get me started. Right? The thing that bothers me about Palmetto Creep Patrol is how hypersensitive they are to criticism. And this idea that if you call their credibility into question, then you're defending pedophiles, right? Everything they do is a deflection. And then, on the other hand, but we're open book. You can always message us if you have questions and that kind of thing. I'll just say this. And this goes out especially to the wrestling people who are sort of into their thing. And these are my opinions. I think once you cross the line into making it a form of entertainment. So I want you to think about this. So I'll just take a look right now. How many people have they, quote unquote, busted? 37. Number 37 as of 16 hours ago. And you put together the videos, and the videos are entertaining to go through. The way the music and the editing, all of it's really well done. It's February. Holy crap. So they haven't been doing it all that long, and they've gotten 37 of these things, right? I'm looking for the first one as we speak. There's number 6 as of January 20. So crap, it's a this year thing. Clearly, right? Catch number 2. January 25th. So we're talking a month. A month. So if you've been watching, that's 37 of these chats. And you watch them. I remember those To Catch a Predators. And you watch them. And it's kind of the same thing being reinforced again and again and again. Firemen tend to be pyromaniacs. Cops tend to have power issues. Psychologists and psychiatrists tend to skew a little. And I gotta say, when you're dealing with this kind of thing and get hits of dopamine and pleasure out of sort of watching this stuff unfold, and you sort of relish in the salacious nature of it while on the surface being repulsed by it, yet being completely ingrained. And I'm not talking about the Palmetto Creek Patrol exclusively. I'm talking about the people who are all about it and feel this sense of, well, something's being done and it's great. Well, Perverted Justice has 650 convictions it can claim, and they did their thing. And I remember we would have these discussions in the staff, because there were a number of positions, but for the most part, people who go after underage people are like smokers or like anything else. They're pariahs. And so at that point, you can't publicly appear that even the slightest you're even taking up, right? For them. But fuck it. I'm not taking up for somebody who's trying to have sex with underage people. But I'm also not going to put up with this bullshit of you can't question Palmetto Creek Patrol and the possibility of abuse and the darker, sinister notion that it is a form of entertainment. They're selling merch, for fuck's sake. The videos are put together in a certain way. And again, am I saying there's anything inherently wrong with that? No. But I am saying I find the whole thing very unsavory, very creepy, and far less effective than they would claim it was. Or let me put it another way. Do you think Perverted Justice made the problem go away or even lessen? I ask again, do you think Perverted Justice and Chris Hansen and Dateline and To Catch a Predator and all that shit made the problem less? Do you think the problem is less than it was? Do you think it's maybe the same? At best, it's the same. But at worst, maybe it's worse. Maybe we normalize the notion. Maybe we just make certain people a little more conscious of how not to get caught. And then the ones that you are catching, you thought they were dumb before. The ones that you're catching now are the dumbest of the dumb. Is this an attack against the Palmetto Creek Patrol? No. Is this an attack against the people, especially the wrestling people, who seem to be way into what they're doing? Beyond just the, well, I like the notion of, when you stare into the abyss, it fucking stares right back into you. And what I see with Palmetto Creek Patrol is the same thing I saw. By the way, if I got people to talk to you about what the fuck we thought of Xavier Von Erich before Perverted Justice, what a fucking neckbeard and weirdo, and the fucking shit that guy would get into with people, and the verbal childishness and all the rest of that shit, he would not have been somebody that you would have felt comfortable about heading up something like this. They say sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? Exposure. You got to shine the lights, and then the cockroaches scatter. All these flowery metaphors for revealing something. The problem with that is sometimes exposure is exactly what something needs to grow. And more than that, if you're not even supposed to question the people who are getting involved with trying to uncover something or whatever, I mean, it's not like we've ever seen people in positions of authority, especially self-styled positions of authority, who end up being corrupt in their own ways, or even worse. It's not like we've ever seen homophobic senators who were secretly banging the fucking page boy in the closet and were self-loathers. That's not a common thing at all. We've never seen people who were placed in this position of moral authority to absolve and to judge others who abuse that authority in the most heinous way possible, like priests. We haven't seen those who had to deal with corrupt members of our society, and then it exposed the corruption within them and exacerbated it. We've never seen that either, have we? What I'm saying is, always be wary of those who consider themselves beyond reproach. Sorry. People have noted that these full disclosures have become more about me delving deeply into topics that I think are relevant and worth studying for wrestling people and people in general alike. You're absolutely right. I'm going to continue to go on this format because I think it's important. And I do want to have a discussion. Is the notion that I'm talking about Palmetto Creek Patrol and comparing them to Perverted Justice, which I think they are a small baby version of, right? Or at least attempting to be. I don't know if they're talking about me when Palmetto's saying, oh, people are saying that we're just going after... I never said any of that shit. I didn't really know a whole lot about them until I looked into them. I just heard about the fucking incident that it started over the whole fake chat thing and all the rest of that bullshit. And I've lived on this planet for 50 years, and I've seen a couple of things. And I gotta tell you, man, people who are obsessed with the notions, and once the salacious and the perverted become entertainment, and let's face it, if you're a pro wrestling person, you're already halfway there. That's what pro wrestling is. It's salacious. It's solving problems through the medium of violence. And this thing that they're doing where they put up these chat logs, they follow a very similar pattern, a very similar story. It's like a child wanting to hear the same bedtime story every night. There's just something that does in the grooves of your brain. And I know I'm speaking really heady here, and you might be thinking like, what the fuck? Why are you even bringing this up? Because at the end of the day, it's just, as a guy who's lived, I made this joke earlier that I've lived like 4 lifetimes. When you've been to, and a lot of people will like think that this is bragging, maybe it is, but when you've been to all 50 states and lived legitimately in a bunch of different ones and all over this country, you've been to every province in Canada and every South American country except for one, and the different places in Europe, China and Korea and Japan. And you've really delved into cultures of different sorts. And you've approached education at highest of levels. And you've had every kind of job imaginable. And you've made mistakes on a grand scale. But you've also managed to do some incredible things and raise 2 incredible kids that have a huge part in the people that they are, while giving all due credit, not only to their mother, but to them as well. They're just great fucking kids. But all I can say is, when I look at Palmetto Creek Academy, or Palmetto Creek Patrol, excuse me, it's the same vibe I got from Xavier. And it doesn't shock me that Perverted Justice fucked off all that money and had a bunch of weird ideas that never found fruition. and at times completely dropped the ball when it came to legal shit and kind of lied about stuff clearly. I'm just thankful that their level of corruption wasn't worse, that they didn't use it as an instrument with which to get people. Though, what is pretty obvious is that there were people who the same standards and rules didn't apply, that they would go after certain people in a harder way that ended up getting cases thrown out because they were making television at the end of the day. And if these guys, Palmetto Creek Patrol, are fashioning themselves as these sort of like justice-seeking folks, and they're selling merch, and they're putting out videos with this sort of well-edited entertainment bent, and they're rallying behind sort of these guys that like, because at the end of the day, here's another comparison to perverted justice. When we would have these discussions amongst the Lethal Wrestling staff, very smart people by and large, you couldn't even offer up, and this is supposed to be the forum where we're allowed to fucking talk about anything, right? But if you even brought up the notion of like, there's something about this that doesn't feel quite right, or fucking Xavier sure was, that all of a sudden Xavier became, oh no, he was not that bad. He was a fucking piece of shit and fucking weirdo. That doesn't invalidate completely what they did in perverted justice, but it does sort of call into question, like, when the guy that would just as soon be an incel killer is the guy running this thing, yeah, you fucking question it. And then when you'd bring up anything of like, this just seems kind of sketchy, it seems like entrapment. But again, when you're a pariah issue, this is important. We got to talk about this shit, man. If you're a pariah issue, the rules are different. Now, that might be a good thing, but we have to acknowledge that the rules are different, right? Because smoking is beyond the pale for most people. Now, I have never smoked. I've never gotten drunk. Never smoked weed. I'm fucking straighter than fucking most people, if not everybody watching this fucking thing right now, right? But even I can acknowledge the way that smokers have been sort of relegated to what they've been relegated to. It's damning. But it's because we've decided we don't like smoking. And it has less to do with the health thing than just the pariah-ish issue of it. Right? And right now, we're in a time, see if this sounds very typical to you. Oh God, I'm going to dive into something else I shouldn't dive into, but we're in the commentary portion. We'll just put it there. If you don't believe that when you stare into the abyss stares back into you, let me ask you this. When you hear about somebody who's done something that you think is beyond the pale, child predator, rapist, someone who has inflicted a huge amount of misery on somebody, and they go to prison, are you that guy or girl that goes, good, because the prisoners will make sure that they get, that now they're going to get butt fucked by Bubba, etc., etc., etc. Is that your first go-to? Are you the believer in the vigilante rapist in the prison? Chances are you are. The abyss has looked into you. The abyss has looked back into you so hard that you have concocted this myth of what prison is. That these prisoners, who on one level you think are scum, right? Like the child predator or whoever that's going into the prison. But yet the prisoners that are already there that weren't child molesters are somehow better, first of all, right? They're morally superior, I suppose, because they will rape the rapist. And that's a good thing. In your mind, that's a positive thing, that this rapist gets raped by people who... Does the act of them raping the rapist absolve them somehow of being a rapist? Or make them clean? Is it an act of repentance? I'm sure you've never delved into those questions. You know why? Because the abyss is staring into you. And it has gone around your intellectual. And you're just purely thinking on an emotional level. You have been put under the ether. And I got to tell you, as somebody who's fascinated with con men, why would I be fascinated with con men? I'm into fucking pro wrestling. Show me a pro wrestling person who is not way into shit like carnivals and fucking con men and true crime and shit like that, and I will show you a shitty pro wrestling person, or a person who's not a pro wrestling person in any way, shape, or fucking form. Pro wrestling is another abyss that you stare into, and it stares right back at you. But are you a believer in this notion of the vigilante rapist? And I'm sure you consider yourself a very good person. But as you've continued to obsess with the salacious, it has corrupted who you are as a person. They say the pro wrestling people are so savvy and they can't be worked, but they've worked themselves into admiring the idea of the vigilante prison rapist. And it's unbelievable. The good news is it's not too late. Maybe what I'm saying won't change you at all. Or maybe at least what I hope it does is you will at least take a moment to reflect. Fuck, man. Who do I want to be as a person? Do I really need to deal with bad stuff that happens in the world and bad people who are in this world? Is the only way that I can feel sated, even a little bit, with knowing that there are horrible things happening out there to kids, to the innocent, to women, etc., 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 is the only way that I can deal with that. To get a kind of glee at the thought of more sexual violence occurring. Well, Steve, that's just, you don't know what I don't know. Okay. Here's a question. Because I sure as fuck didn't see this. Now, a number of people agreed that the cop put his knee on George Floyd and fucking killed him. It was a horrible monster who abused his power. You know what I didn't see? People talking about the notion of he would get into jail and he would get fucking raped and that's what he deserved. Why not? I'm just asking a question. Be careful of where you choose to give your attention and time, and where you choose and what you choose to go around your intellect in favor of only having your emotions triggered and pressed like a button in order to have a fucking chemical reaction that changes the fucking grooves in your very brain, where you have to see these stories again and again and again and again, and then you need to feel like some form of balancing is taking place. And that balance comes in the form of a group that's going, hey, we're beyond reproach, and anybody who tries to question anything about us are obviously supporting pedophiles. Because historically, let me tell you, when these kind of situations come up, and those that we decide to be the arbiter and the balancers and the justice getters in this world that don't have checks and balances on themselves, it doesn't turn out very well most of the time. And again, for those who want to fight what I want to say, you are more than welcome to. Of course you are. But I ask again, for all the things that perverted justice did with super weirdo Xavier Von Erich at the helm, and all the supposed good they did the problem get smaller? Or in the big scheme, did it really affect anything? Or did it in fact popularize, make visible, put enough bad examples of bottom feeders? This is what a fucking online pervert is. So somebody who really is one, but that could look at those guys and go, well, yeah, but I'm not that guy, so obviously we're not the same. I'll just leave that hanging there. Pretty brutal, intense episode, but I think the subject warranted it. Jesus Christ, Steve. It's time to get this up. It's time to go to bed. This has been Full Disclosure.